So I've got started working on the vertical stabilizer and the rudder. And yesterday my friend Ian came in for a few hours to help me with the build. And we took the horizontal stabilizer out of the fuselage to make a bit more space for when I'm working on the vertical stabilizer. We also took the fuselage off of its stand and dropped it down onto the floor. And that was so that the top of the tail would be at a bit of a better working height. We did elevate the tail a little bit here, and that's so that the fuselage is now in its level flight orientation. And that will allow me to get these ribs here level. We also put the rod ends in for connecting the rudder, and we have the rudder installed here with just the bolts inside. And after that, what I did was I went in, I measured where the positions of the ribs were going to be and marked them out. I double checked then that the corresponding rib and the rudder was going to match up and none of these bars were going to be in the way, and they're all good. I'm going to move on now to installing the ribs into the vertical stabilizer. And they're a little bit different than the ones in the horizontal stabilizer. The main difference being they have this square notch cut out at the back, and on the horizontal it's a round curve. That's because this back post here is a square. And I'm going to be paying particular attention to make sure that this back edge of the rib ends up being flush with the back edge of the post. And that's because when the fiberglass fairing is being installed, it's going to be installed up to those back edges. These ribs are actually pretty well cut out. They're mostly fitting into their positions. I'll just need to do a slight bit of trimming for them. On my test fits so far, I found that the square cutouts here, right in the corner where it's rounded, I'm just going to need to take off a slight bit of material so that the post can actually fit the full way in and the back edges get flush. And then on the front of them, I think I'll just need to cut out the angle of the leading edge bar here so that it fits smoothly in. There's then a couple of ribs that are down here on the bottom that kind of have an interesting shape or are installed in interesting locations, so I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to those when I'm installing those. Other than that, it seems pretty straightforward based on what I've done with the horizontal stabilizer, so hoping it doesn't take too long. All right, it's been now a few days working on the vertical stabilizer and the rudder and made a lot of progress. I reckon I might be halfway through the entire section. What I've gotten done so far is I've gotten most of the ribs installed, bonded and varnished. With the exception of this rib, which goes here, and this forward bulkhead, which I'll speak to in a second. In terms of getting the other ribs in, As expected, trimming was pretty trivial. They were already fitting really well. And in terms of bonding them in, I did a lot better gluing job this time. I'm very happy with these. A few days ago then, I had some help come out to the hangar. So Pam came out for a day, and one of her colleagues' partners came out too, Peter. And what we did was we put 2 coats of varnish on the ribs in both the vertical and the rudder. That was super helpful. Thank you, Pam and Peter. It would have taken me a really long time to do it just by myself. So it was nice to have some help. What I'm working on right now is actually preparing this rib to get installed. And the reason I didn't install it yet is I wanted to make these access cover angles first and get them positioned on the rib before I install it. And the reason being is drilling these holes with the rib installed was just going to be a little bit awkward. The 90-degree angle adapter I have for my drill, it's quite large and it wouldn't really get under this rib here. So I made the angles, and I've already pre-drilled where they're going. For example, this right side here, it's just held on with some clecos. And so now actually this rib is ready to install. This forward bulkhead then as well, it was quite large relative to where it's installed. So I have already done quite a lot of trimming just to get it to fit in here. I still need to trim back this outside edge quite a lot to get it to line up with the bar on the fuselage here. So it'll make a nice transition for the fabric. I need to do that on both sides. And this also has some access cover angles to go on it. So I've made the angles. I'm just going to trim this bulkhead now, install the angles, and then install the bulkhead in. I probably should have not installed this rib until I had these access cover angles in. These were a little bit awkward to get to, but not as much as what would be on this rib. But these are drilled and ready to get installed as well. After that, then I can work on putting on the fiberglass fairings. I've already started to fit them, but to progress any further, I do need this rib in, so that's why I'm working on that right now. And then once the fiberglass fairings are installed on both the aft side of the vertical stabilizer post and the fore side of the rudder, that's pretty much the whole process done, except for the top cap. So going to get working on these and keep going. For trimming the outside edges of the bulkhead, I didn't have a protractor on hand that I could use to trace a new line along the existing edge. So I grabbed this metal ruler that has some flex in it and used that positioned on the 2 marks I had on the top and bottom, and then bent it, just eyeballing the edge all along, and then marked it. Of course, prior to actually cutting away any material, I refitted again just to make sure I was happy with the line that it was going to be and that the marks were accurate that I'd made earlier. All right, very quick update here. This rib is now bonded in along with the forward bulkhead rib, and the access cover angles are also installed. Got 3 coats of varnish on this rib and the bulkhead, and I put a 3rd coat on these ribs and the corresponding ribs on the rudder. The manual called out for at least 2 coats of varnish and suggested 3. And I've put 3 on the lower ribs as there's more likely to be maybe water ingress there, etc. It's lower to the ground. So all the rest have 2, and these have 3. I've positioned the fiberglass fairing that goes on the aft side of the vertical stabilizer, and I'm just about to glue that up. So I've positioned here. I think I have enough clamps for the job. So I'm going to pull those off, get the glue ready, and then put it back on. Right after that, I'm going to start working on the fiberglass fairing that goes on the front of the rudder right here. So that requires some trimming and positioning before it gets glued on. All right, the rudder is now complete. As you would have seen in that time lapse, I got the fairing bonded on and cut out these access holes. I put the fuselage back on its stand, hence why it's super tall. And I've mounted in everything, so we got the rudder here, horizontal stabilizer, and the elevator. And it's starting to look like an airplane now, which is cool. A few things I still need to do, like I'd mentioned already, I need to do the end caps here and up on the top. I also need to measure the deflection of the rudder, both left and right, and verify that it's 25 degrees. There's 2 tabs in here that I can grind back if I do need to get more deflection. And last is there's a number of areas where there's maybe a glob of adhesive that's kind of sticking out or protruding. And when it comes to fabric covering, they say if you can feel it, you're going to see it. So prior to covering, I'm going to come along with some body fill and kind of fill in and then smooth out these transitions, just so you can't really see it in the fabric. There's going to be a number of areas in the airplane I'm going to need to do that, so I'm just going to kind of hang back and do as many of them together as I can. But other than that, I'm really happy with the progress so far. It's really kind of coming together now and taking shape. I'm going to switch to working on the flight controls. So I'm going to swing this all around. Flight controls are mostly up in the front of the fuselage. And I'm going to end this video here. And the next video will be about putting in the flight controls. So thanks for watching. I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.